We begin our summary with a man named Driss, full of energy and charm, despite leading a modest and difficult life. One day, Driss attended a job interview, not out of a desire for employment, but merely to obtain proof of participation so he could continue receiving government aid. The position was unusual. A live-in caregiver for a wealthy man named Philippe, who was completely paralyzed from the neck down. Unlike the other candidates, Driss had no formal experience or interest in caregiving. In fact, during the interview, he clashed with Philippe over music and behaved inappropriately, even flirting with Philippe's assistant, Magali. Initially, Philippe found Driss obnoxious and had no intention of hiring him. However, something about Driss's boldness and honesty intrigued him. Rather than rejecting him outright, Philippe promised to sign the document Driss needed the next day. Before leaving the mansion, Driss quietly pocketed one of the ornate decorative eggs on display, a careless but telling act. He returned home to a cramped and chaotic household where he lived with several younger siblings. Later that night, his mother returned from work and was furious to see him. Driss had been absent for 6 months and had done nothing to improve his situation. Still unemployed and unreliable, he had become a source of disappointment. Unable to tolerate his irresponsibility any longer, his mother made the painful decision to throw him out. The next day, Driss returned to Philippe's mansion to collect the signed interview letter. However, before he could meet Philippe, he had a conversation with Yvonne, the head nurse. She revealed that numerous caregivers had come and gone in quick succession. Despite the luxurious accommodations and gourmet meals, none of them had lasted more than 2 weeks. Most simply couldn't handle the job's demands. Working hours stretched around the clock, 24 hours a day, but the conditions were unmatched in comfort. Even so, the emotional and physical toll proved too much for many. Then, unexpectedly, Philippe made a decision that caught everyone off guard. He offered Driss a 1-month trial position as his personal caregiver. With nowhere else to go, unemployed and recently cast out by his mother, Driss accepted. On his first day, Driss's inexperience was glaring. He fell asleep during a massage session, scrubbed Philippe's feet with shampoo, and even spilled hot water on his legs, though Philippe, paralyzed from the neck down, couldn't feel the burn. When assigned the task of cleaning Philippe after using the toilet, Driss became visibly distressed and refused outright. Disgusted, he declared that he would never do such a thing in his life. In the end, the responsibility fell to another nurse, but Driss remained in his role, his duties continuing. The next day, he was tasked with taking Philippe to a gallery. However, Driss refused to use the standard medical van, which he thought resembled an ambulance and was too depressing. Instead, he chose a luxury car that better suited Philippe's status. At the gallery, Driss was puzzled as he watched Philippe silently admire an abstract painting for over an hour. To Driss, it seemed like nothing more than random shapes and colors. But when Philippe decided to buy the piece for 41,000 euros, Driss was stunned. Still, he understood. Philippe was a man of wealth, and his tastes followed no limits. Sometime later, one of Philippe's acquaintances approached him with a warning. He advised Philippe to be cautious of Driss, revealing that Driss had only recently been released from prison for theft. The man described Driss as delinquent and disrespectful, unfit to be trusted. But Philippe disagreed. He defended Driss without hesitation, expressing his deep satisfaction with the care and companionship Driss provided. Unlike others, Driss brought something unique to his life, an effortless ability to entertain and uplift in the most unexpected moments. The bond between the two continued to grow. One day, Driss stumbled upon a secret that caught him off guard. He discovered that Philippe had been regularly corresponding with a woman named Eleanor through heartfelt letters. Intrigued, Driss became increasingly curious about this mysterious relationship, sensing that there was more to it than friendship. Not long after, Philippe experienced a sudden episode of shortness of breath and fever, side effects of his ongoing medication. Despite being half asleep at the time, Driss acted quickly, wheeling Philippe out of the house for fresh air. What began as a simple act of care turned into an unforgettable morning. Driss took Philippe on an early tour around Paris, letting him enjoy the peace and beauty of the city before sunrise. To ease Philippe's pain, Driss even offered him marijuana as a temporary remedy. During their walk, Driss brought up Eleanor. He couldn't understand how Philippe, a man paralyzed from the neck down, could maintain a romantic relationship. Philippe answered simply, explaining that he experienced love and intimacy not through touch, but through sound. through the tenderness in a woman's voice. As the city stirred awake, Philippe opened up about his past. He spoke of his late wife, Alice, a kind and loving woman who had shared 25 beautiful years with him. Their marriage had been a source of deep happiness until tragedy struck. Alice suffered a miscarriage, lost too much blood, and passed away. Her death left a permanent scar. In her memory, Philippe adopted a daughter named Elisa. Though his illness confined him physically, it wasn't the paralysis that caused his greatest suffering. It was the loss of Alice that continued to haunt him, even more than the limits of his body. Despite undergoing the best treatments money could buy, doctors estimated that Philippe's life expectancy would not go beyond 70. But for Philippe, the true weight of life was not in how long he had left, but in learning how to live with the pain of what he had already lost. After their heartfelt mourning together, Philippe made an important decision. He officially asked Driss to become his permanent caregiver, having successfully completed the probation period. It was a gesture of trust and recognition, proof that Driss had become far more than just an employee. However, Philippe also used the moment to bring up a delicate issue. He confronted Driss about the decorative egg that had once belonged to his late wife, Alice. Philippe had realized that Driss had been quietly taking small items from around the house. When asked directly, Driss feigned ignorance, claiming he had no idea what Philippe was referring to, though in truth, he had simply forgotten where he had hidden it. The following day, Driss picked up his siblings from school, but on the way, he made a stop at the police station. His younger brother, Adama, had been detained in connection with a marijuana incident. Fortunately, Adama was released, as he was still a minor. The incident, however, served as a reminder of the environment Driss had come from, and what he was trying to rise above. Back at the mansion, Driss noticed Magali assisting Philippe with writing a romantic poem for Eleanor. Upon reading it, Driss couldn't help but laugh. To him, it sounded like nonsense. What surprised him even more was discovering that Philippe and Eleanor had been exchanging letters for 6 months, but had never actually met in person. Frustrated by what he saw as a stagnant and overly cautious relationship, Driss pushed Philippe to take action. Eventually, Philippe agreed to call Eleanor directly. With Driss urging him on, he finally sent her his photograph, beginning the first step towards something more real. Later, while attending an opera together, Driss offered a piece of advice. He told Philippe not to be ashamed of his physical condition. In today's world, he joked, most women preferred wealth over appearance anyway. The sentiment, though delivered lightheartedly, came from a place of genuine affection and growing camaraderie between them. Their bond deepened with each passing day, but not everything was smooth. One afternoon, Driss lost his temper after a disrespectful encounter with Philippe's daughter, Elisa. He soon learned, however, that her rudeness wasn't limited to him. She had been treating everyone in the household with similar contempt. Driss requested permission to discipline her, believing she needed a wake-up call, but Philippe, feeling protective, refused. Frustrated by Philippe's overindulgence, Driss stormed off to his room, visibly upset. Later that evening, Driss was seen painting an abstract piece, ironic, considering how little he had appreciated such art before. It was a quiet reflection of how much he had changed. Thanks to Driss's influence, Philippe slowly began to assert himself more. He eventually found the courage to confront Elisa about her behavior, gently encouraging her to treat others with respect. With tensions eased, Driss resumed his duties, but something had shifted. Where once he approached the job with clumsy seriousness, now he performed it with ease, humor, and enjoyment. Caring for Philippe had become more than just work. It had become something personal, something fulfilling. As time passed, the bond between Driss and Philippe deepened. Their connection grew beyond caretaker and patient, evolving into a genuine friendship. Philippe, preparing for his upcoming birthday, confided in Driss that he had grown tired of how his family treated him, like a fragile man on the verge of death. With Driss, however, things felt different. He was treated like a person again, not a burden. The day of the birthday party finally arrived. Philippe had arranged for a live orchestra to mark the occasion in grand style. Yet beneath the surface, he remained reserved, burdened by the artificial nature of the gathering. Meanwhile, Driss noticed Elisa locked in her room, crying. Concerned, he approached her and asked what had happened. Elisa admitted she had just been dumped by her boyfriend, Bastian. She then asked Driss to intervene and talk to him. At first, Driss refused, reluctant to get involved in their personal matters. But when Elisa offered him a generous sum of money in exchange, he reconsidered and agreed. Elsewhere in the mansion, Philippe was showing Driss's abstract painting to a friend. To everyone's surprise, the artwork sold for 11,000 euros. Driss, Driss, seeing that Philippe appeared uninterested in his own celebration, decided to liven up the mood. He invited everyone to join the dance floor, filling the room with music and movement. His efforts paid off. Philippe laughed wholeheartedly, truly enjoying himself for the first time that evening. Later that night, Driss helped Philippe back to his room. There, he handed Philippe a letter, a reply from Eleonore. Inside, she expressed her intention to come to Paris the following week to meet him. She also included several beautiful photographs of herself. The news overwhelmed Philippe with joy, leaving him too excited to sleep. The awaited day soon arrived. Philippe, full of anticipation, prepared himself to meet Eleonore. Yvonne accompanied him to the cafe where the meeting was scheduled. At the same time, Driss had succeeded in convincing Bastien to apologize to Elisa, helping mend their broken relationship. Later, Driss paid a quiet visit to the place where his mother worked. Still burdened with guilt for the pain he had caused her, he watched from a distance, without approaching, then quietly turned away. Meanwhile, Philippe waited anxiously at the cafe for his long-anticipated meeting with Eleonore. Nervous and uncertain, he feared that she might be disappointed upon seeing him in his paralyzed state. The weight of insecurity became overwhelming, and Philippe eventually chose to leave the cafe before she arrived. In a twist of fate, just as he exited, he unknowingly passed by Eleonore, an elegant and graceful woman, without realizing who she was. Days went by as Philippe tried to push the missed opportunity from his thoughts. Then, in an unexpected gesture, he invited Driss to join him on a private plane trip. While in the air, Philippe handed Driss 11,000 euros, the proceeds from the sale of his abstract painting. He praised Driss's unexpected talent, acknowledging that he was more than just a caretaker. The following day, they spent time sightseeing and enjoying the simple pleasures of friendship. The dynamic between them had evolved. They were no longer employer and employee, but close friends sharing meaningful experiences. Upon returning home, Driss encountered his younger brother Adama at Philippe's residence. Adama had been thrown out by their mother after once again getting involved with marijuana. Frustrated, Driss scolded him for repeatedly causing trouble and making poor choices. Later, Philippe called Driss into his room for a private conversation. He gently began asking about Driss's past. Opening up for the first time, Driss revealed the truth behind his life. Originally from Senegal, he had been orphaned and adopted at the age of 8. The woman he referred to as his mother was, in fact, his aunt. His real name was Bakari. Adama, too, was born under difficult circumstances. His mother had become pregnant out of wedlock and struggled ever since. Listening to Driss's painful backstory left Philippe moved. He had always seen Driss as full of life and humor, never suspecting the sorrow he carried. With heartfelt sincerity, Philippe suggested that Driss step down from his role as a caregiver. He believed that Driss needed time to heal and address his personal life, and above all, that he was capable of much more. Philippe didn't want him to settle for being a nurse forever. He wanted to see Driss achieve more, build a better future, pursue new opportunities. With deep gratitude, he acknowledged that Driss's care had not only been exceptional, it had changed his life. Although Philippe never truly wanted Driss to leave, he knew that as a friend, it was the right thing to do for Driss's own future. That morning, as Driss prepared to leave Philippe's home, a quiet sadness filled the air. Every staff member at the mansion was heartbroken. Driss's presence had brought warmth, joy, and laughter to every corner of the house. His departure marked the end of something deeply special. With Adama by his side, Driss left Philippe's mansion. On the way, they stopped to meet their mother as she returned home from work. Both brothers humbly apologized for their mistakes, taking her bags without hesitation. No matter how angry she had been, she was still their mother, and she forgave them. Together, the three walked home, their bond restored. Sometime later, Driss applied for a job as a courier, beginning a new chapter. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Philippe had hired a new caregiver, but the atmosphere had changed. Though the new nurse was competent, they lacked Driss's sense of humor and personal touch. Philippe had grown quiet again, uncomfortable and withdrawn, no longer uplifted by the same joy. One evening, Philippe experienced a sudden bout of shortness of breath. The new nurse attempted to help, but Philippe refused. It was clear, what he needed wasn't just medical help, it was Driss. Yvonne, seeing this, decided to call Driss and ask him to return, even if only briefly. The next day, Driss came back to visit. When Philippe saw him, his emotions were a mix of joy and nostalgia. Driss, true to his character, immediately teased Philippe for his overgrown beard and thick mustache. Their laughter returned as if no time had passed. Later, Driss took Philippe on a spontaneous drive. He sped through the streets until the police stopped them for reckless driving. Thinking fast, Driss told the officers that Philippe was having a medical emergency. Without hesitation, the police offered an escort to the nearest hospital. But when they arrived and the police drove away, Driss revealed his true plan. He had brought Philippe not to a hospital, but to the seaside. There, in front of the calm ocean, Philippe breathed in the fresh air, the sun on his skin, the wind against his face. It was a kind of peace and freedom he hadn't felt in a long time. Not in his luxurious house, not with the best doctors, but here, with his best friend. The next day, Driss took Philippe out for lunch at a quiet restaurant. After sitting down across from him, Driss suddenly stood up, saying he had something important to do. Before leaving, he handed Philippe the decorative egg he had once stolen from his home, a symbolic gesture to close a chapter of their journey. Philippe was left alone, confused and slightly anxious, unaware of who the special guest Driss had mentioned could be. Moments later, a beautiful woman approached and took a seat across from him. It was Eleanor, the woman with whom Philippe had shared letters and longing for months. From a distance, Driss watched the reunion with a satisfied smile. He knew that this final surprise, reuniting Philippe with Eleanor, was his last gift, a silent farewell from a friend who had changed Philippe's life forever.